cui bono, right? Who benefits? It's always useful to start that question in any country. Who benefits? Who wants Iran bombed off the map and for their own reasons? Who are Iran's rivals and enemies? Perennially, it's the Gulf Arab states, countries like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and Qatar. You know, Qatar, the country that just gave Donald Trump a really, really nice $400 million plane, really a gilded flying palace for his own use, both during his presidency, and after. Trump plans to take that plane with him and keep using it after he leaves office, if he ever leaves office. And you remember United Arab Emirates, famous for recently structuring a totally pointless crypto financial transaction so that $2 billion of it would be stuffed into the Trump family's otherwise worthless brand new crypto financial firm. And of course, you remember the Saudis, who stuffed another $2 billion into the pockets of Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, just as Trump's first term in office came to a close. You might remember enough people were alarmed about that when it happened that the Trump folks actually sort of bothered to come up with an excuse for what made that okay. They said, don't worry, Jared will never again work for the U.S. government. He's never coming back to Washington. So it's okay that he's taken all this money from the Saudis now. We will never have to worry about having somebody involved in U.S. policy who has also just been given billions of dollars by Saudi Arabia, apparently for no reason. Well, that was the explanation when he took all that money from the Saudis at the end of Trump's first term. And now today, who has been leading the negotiations on behalf of the United States government with Iran before we just started this war with them today? I mean, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in St. Kitts this week. It wasn't him. No, it was Jared Kushner, president's son-in-law, recently paid billions of dollars by Iran's chief rival, and nevertheless sitting there alongside Trump's tiny real estate friend, Steve Witkoff, who has sought recently to improve his considerable family fortunes by going to Qatar to seek money from its sovereign wealth fund. Weird that those talks didn't work, right?
Rachel Maddow left Israel out, and that tells you everything you need to know about what you just watched. She opened with the right question: who benefits? But then built an entire segment that carefully avoided the most obvious, most consequential answer. Instead, she pointed to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, laid out financial ties, and gave viewers something that felt like accountability. But stripping Israel out of that equation isn't analysis, it's narrative protection. And in a moment this serious, that omission isn't harmless. It's the difference between understanding why we're heading toward war with Iran and being misled about it. Because this isn't just about cable news framing. This is about a potential war, billions in taxpayer dollars, regional destabilization, and the very real risk of American lives being put on the line. When the public is given an incomplete story, it shapes consent. It conditions people to accept escalation without ever fully understanding who is driving it or why. Look at what's happening behind the scenes. Maddow correctly identifies financial relationships between Gulf states and Trump-linked figures. That part is real. But here's the pattern most people are missing. When you name every regional actor pushing for confrontation with Iran except Israel, the one country whose leadership has openly, consistently, and aggressively pushed for this exact outcome for decades, you are not doing journalism. You are constructing a narrative that protects power. Because this didn't start with Trump, and it doesn't end with him. This trajectory has been building for years. Benjamin Netanyahu has spent decades warning about Iran, lobbying US leaders, and shaping the strategic conversation in Washington around confrontation. That's not controversial. That's documented. Yet in Maddow's version of events, that entire dimension simply disappears. That's where this becomes more than bias. By focusing only on Gulf money and transactional corruption, she reframes the push toward war as if it's just about Trump's personal dealings. That's the sleight of hand. It shrinks a long-term geopolitical strategy into a short-term scandal, and in doing so, shields the deeper alliance structures and policy goals that actually explain why this moment is happening. Now the mainstream counter-narrative says this is simple. It's Trump being reckless, chasing money, and stumbling into conflict. And yes, those dynamics exist. But that explanation collapses the second you ask why major media figures refuse to scrutinize Israel's role with the same intensity. If this were just about Trump, there wouldn't be such a consistent pattern of omission. And that silence is happening at a critical moment. Public opinion is shifting, especially among younger Americans who are increasingly skeptical of long-standing foreign policy assumptions. That creates pressure, and when pressure builds, those who benefit from the status quo tend to act before that window closes. So when you see this sudden acceleration toward conflict, you have to ask, is this reactive policy, or is it the culmination of years of pressure finally reaching its moment? Because the real story isn't just about who benefits today. It's about who has been pushing for this outcome all along, and why the media won't say it out loud. So let me ask you, do you think Rachel Maddow left Israel out by accident? Or is this exactly how far mainstream media is willing to go and no further when it comes to explaining why America goes to war? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is only getting started.